In the previous episode, Preparata argued that the interwar settlement created an unstable terrain, Versailles constraining Germany without resolving it, Bolshevism reshaping the strategic horizon, and Weimar becoming an incubator of volatility. Now we enter what Preparata sees as the economic machinery of the 1920s. This is the phase he describes as artificial prosperity. A Germany temporarily stabilized, not through organic recovery, but through dependence, through credit, through external financial architecture. This chapter is about the strange calm before the collapse. Stabilization without sovereignty. After the hyperinflation crisis of 1923, Germany does not simply rebuild freely. It rebuilds under supervision. Preparata treats the mid-1920s as a period in which Germany is allowed to breathe, but only through a system of managed loans and reparations. Germany becomes enmeshed in an international credit mechanism, borrowing from abroad in order to pay obligations imposed from abroad. This is not economic sovereignty, it is conditional life support, and Preparata argues that such a system produces fragility, prosperity that is real in appearance, but externally anchored, and therefore reversible. America enters the structure. One of Preparata's largest themes is the arrival of the United States as the new financial center. World War I, he argues, brought America decisively onto the grand chessboard. In this chapter, the United States becomes not merely an observer, but a creditor-manager. Loans flow into Germany, industry revives, cities modernize, the Weimar surface begins to look stable. Preparata calls this phase artificial prosperity, a boom not rooted in autonomous recovery, but in financial inflow. The deeper point is structural. When a society's stability depends on external credit, its fate is no longer fully its own. Crisis as paced possibility. Here Preparata's argument sharpens. He does not treat the crash of 1929 as a neutral act of nature. He treats it as a systemic turning point, the withdrawal of credit, the collapse of the loan scaffolding, and the opening of the political abyss. He sees the Weimar economy as deliberately exposed to shock. This is where Preparata's broader thesis emerges again. Economic crisis is not merely misfortune, it is political fertilizer. When societies collapse, extremism becomes plausible, order becomes desperation, democracy becomes fragile. In such conditions, reactionary movements do not need to persuade patiently. They only need to promise escape. The political function of economic collapse. The collapse is not simply economic, it is psychological, institutional, civilizational. Preparata argues that the breakdown of Weimar opened space for forces that had been incubating all along. The Republic begins to disintegrate, coalitions fail, unemployment spreads, radical parties surge, and the extreme becomes imaginable. Preparata's thesis is that Hitler's rise cannot be understood without this economic architecture, the sequence of boom and collapse, the pacing of crisis, the manipulation of dependence. Hitler is not yet fully installed, but the terrain is being prepared. Again, we must read Preparata with care. He writes as if financial centers move history like chess pieces. History is rarely so clean. The crash of 1929 was global. It involved many forces beyond any single will. But the structural insight remains important. Dependency creates vulnerability. Crisis creates political possibility. Collapse invites extremism. Even without a perfect blueprint, systems can produce predictable outcomes. And Preparata wants us to see Hitler not as inexplicable, but as emergent from the machinery of interwar fragility. So Chapter 3 carries the argument forward. Germany stabilizes, but through loans. Prosperity returns, but artificially. Collapse arrives, and democracy fractures. Hitler does not appear from nowhere. He appears through crises. And in the next episode, Preparata moves into the decisive years, 1930 to 1933, the final disintegration of Weimar, and the political installation of the reactionary instrument, because the Conjuring is nearing completion.